What if the most powerful people in the world were basically immune to death? This question, and all the consequences that follow it, make resurrection magic terrifying in D&D. In comparison, the fact that it lessens the stakes seems like a small problem. In this video, I'm giving you 10 consequences of resurrection that I sorted into 3 families that go from cool world-building texture all the way to fully disturbing. And by the end, you will be able to use these at your table to add a new kind of depth to your campaign. Let's start straight away with our first family. It regroups the first ideas that come to mind when you start to pull on the thread of the existence of resurrection magic. And they all have to do with the power structures of the world, like money, religion, political power, etc. For our first consequence, I would like you to imagine something. Say you're a king. You're immensely powerful. You love your family, and you're really scared about your heir dying by accident. You know resurrection magic exists, and that it requires high-quality diamonds. What do? This one is called the Diamond Standard. Many resurrection spells require a diamond as a material component, and the D&D rules focus on the value of that diamond. The thing that interests me is that it does need to be a diamond, which means that it is not enough to be rich. In a world where resurrection magic exists, it's probably safe to imagine that diamonds are a highly controlled resource. Maybe there are royal diamond mines, ancient monk orders tasked with keeping a reserve for the poor. Maybe the rich bought all the diamonds as their life insurance and it triggers societal instability. That's actually the first example I want to give you today. Feel free to steal it. The White Stone Company is a guild of resurrectionists that sell life policies. You pay a big monthly fee and they reserve a diamond for you with your name on it. If you die under covered circumstances, they bring you back. But like real-life insurance companies, they exclude a bunch of things. You can't be responsible for your death, you can't die outside the realm, etc. And maybe they've been there for so long that they're the only ones with stock and you have to go through them. Consequence number 2. Pretend someone in the party has died. Nobody has access to resurrection magic, so they go to the temple and they find this old priest there, and that guy doesn't care for gold. However, he asks for their loyalty and secrets. Maybe now they will even have to work for him. Many people tend to view the resurrection transaction as just a price thing, but clerics basically have monopoly over who gets to come back. So I don't think imagining that some of them might be power hungry or tie this ability to some extreme aspect of their belief system is too far-fetched. What you can do today to make this idea work in your world is to give the religion's resurrection doctrines that people just know about. To build them, you can ask yourself questions like, who can get access to it? Can saints benefit from it without paying? Is there some weird tradition where firstborn children of royalty get killed and raised immediately after death? This gives a lot of flavor to the world, and the factions with the more extreme rules can become great antagonists or even allies. Idea number 3. Imagine a kingdom ruled by a tyrant. An assassin finds their way to the king's chambers and somehow manages to put their knife through the king's heart. And then, 3 days later, the king is back at it. Oh, and of course, they will take the opportunity to raise taxes and hang the assassin while threatening anyone who might try to bring them back. Assassination becoming essentially useless is almost just a detail, though. If a monarch can't really die from anything other than old age, how does the people react? Do borders stay the same? Like, if you can't really kill an enemy monarch, is war still a viable way to expand your kingdom? These notions don't necessarily all disappear at once, but they will probably all undergo massive transformations. To use this idea in your game, you could build a realm where the people in power are so rich that it's vain to try and assassinate the rulers. Everyone in the royal family knows it, so they get more evil with each new generation, and they even have a private police of de facto immortal policy enforcers. The people don't even believe in hope anymore. And I think that could actually be a cool campaign premise. Can hope be killed? And you build adventures around this idea to explore it. Every idea in this family has to do with the high-level institutions. Cancelable death turns money, faith, and power into machines that get to decide who can come back. But how does that shape society? Just before I show you this, I need to talk to you about Peku, aka the sponsor of today's video. These guys make the best hand-drawn fantasy maps, scenes, and tokens out there. My favorite part about their stuff is how the maps all have many different variations to make them work in many contexts. For example, you could have a night version, a day version, a snow version, and a fire version of the same exact map, meaning more flexibility to adapt to your specific story. And they just launched something I think a lot of you guys might be interested in, the Essential tier. It's a great way to get access to their best stuff at a more affordable price point. It gives you all their fancy maps, scenes, and tokens, either as a bundle for $30 a month or individually for $15 each. The only things that are not included are the animated versions of the maps and scenes, the tokens builder, and the easy VTT integration. But I really love this because 8,000 maps and 3,500 painted scenes with new ones added every week is kind of a lot. So if you're interested, you can access this directly on their website. I will just leave the link in the description. Alright, so idea number 4. Imagine a battlefield the morning after a really bloody fight. In a world with resurrection magic, the richest knights in the fancy plate get raised and walk home, and the commoners in their leather gear just stay there, where they fell. This one is called The Returned. Once coming back has a price tag, you end up with a registry, formal or informal, that splits the world in two. Those who can afford to come back, and those who can't. Obviously, inequality exists in our world too, but this takes it to 11. Your bloodline doesn't just decide how you live anymore, but whether death applies to you like it does anyone else. And that would probably create massive resentment. I like to imagine that society would be so divided on this that the people who do come back might stop being seen as truly alive. They're not undead, but maybe the resentment runs so deep that they might as well be. And maybe they start to believe it too. They come back a little colder, at some point even start renouncing the values of these simple living things, but decided that they didn't belong anymore. You could even have people fighting for the rights of the returned. And nobody would listen, because everyone would assume that they're the privileged ones. Like, oh, cute, you came back from the dead and you complain. Oh, poor thing. Quick disclaimer, this introduces some form of discrimination at the table, which can get dark very fast. So if you feel like trying this, please make sure everyone's actually on board before doing it. But if your group is into it, maybe you try using this. The Order of the Last Blade is a knightly order where the powerful send their bastard children. They're trained from birth, raised from the dead the instant they fall, and sent on the missions no one else survives because they're so used to dying that they don't even care anymore. But what if being unable to die didn't make you an outcast at all, and instead just made you reckless? Tell me, how would you act if you knew you could come back? Would you do parkour? I would, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, a group of people who has known since birth that they can do very dangerous things without risking true death would probably develop eccentric customs, rituals, and theories around it. Consequence number 5 is Immortals' recklessness. Maybe some nobles duel to the death every week or host poison drinking parties. Maybe some noble families have disturbing traditions like, oh, in my family we believe that each birthday we should die to shed the past year and start anew. Basically, I'd like you to explore the consequences of resurrection on daily behavior among the elites, and how that shapes the world. Maybe some of these rituals or celebrations are public, and the common folks love it. You can give your campaign a very dark tone using these, or even more strange. Have these extreme events planned, but make them very banal, which would make them seem even more alien for the players. And you can add flavor in many different ways. Maybe each resurrection costs more, or ages the soul, and actually, the nobles feel extremely old by the time they reach their 20th birthday. By the way, if you like some of these ideas, I just wanted you to know that to help you explore them better, I made Life Only Always, which is a set of 10 NPCs all tied to these concepts in one way or another that you can grab and just drop into any campaign. And it's available for my patrons on Patreon, so just check out the link in the description. So far, we've mostly looked at this from a bird's eye perspective. Kingdoms, religions, societal movements, but what if the weirdest consequences happened at the individual level? The third family of consequences explores the impact of resurrection magic on individual people and can therefore help you roleplay both NPCs and PCs with a surprising twist. For idea number 6, I would like you to think about the Ship of Theseus thought experiment. If you're not familiar with this, it goes something like this. Imagine you have a ship, and you replace every single plank and rope one by one until the ship is 100% made of material that wasn't present when the ship first sailed. The question is the ship at the end of the process still the same ship? Philosophers have thought about this a lot, and it's a problem of personal identity. Basically, are you the continuity of your consciousness or just the continuity of the pattern? In a fantasy world where souls are an objective truth that can be proven, and where resurrection is a thing, I think it's interesting to imagine how this question could still be there. Maybe in your world, some people believe that the brief, or not so brief, moment when the soul escapes the body is enough to end that version of the person. They might believe that people are actually the sum of soul plus body, and that rupturing that continuity makes the resulting person who comes back a completely different individual. From the point of view of that new person, nothing would seem different. And they would never know, because they would have just started to exist. They wouldn't have experienced that end. The people who believe this, even if they are extremely wealthy, might be terrified of dying because they would believe that they would die forever. I hope I'm making sense here, and this is also why I would probably never enter a teleportation machine even if it existed, by the way. I like this idea because it can work with all of the previously mentioned. Maybe one day a king arrives on the throne and they believe this. And they become so paranoid that they try to become a vampire or a lich because they're less scared of being undead than of being resurrected. But maybe you would like to explore something else. Which takes us to idea number 7. In a world where resurrection exists, people come back, and if they do, it means they have seen the other side. So what did they see? Of course, depending on your world and your pantheon, it could be many things. But what I like is the notion that seeing what's on the other side pretty much kills fear and hope at the same time. In real life, what happens when we die is the big question every culture has been obsessed with forever. Does it feel like before you were born? Or do we hope there is something somewhere? We can never be 100% sure. And that uncertainty is extremely central to our cultures, religions, and basically all the art we've ever made. In a fantasy world, you kind of take that away, and you don't have to wonder anymore. Even peasants have heard the tale of the duke's son who died, came back, and described the golden holes waiting for him. My point is, the answer is known, and it's almost boring. Which means death is not as terrifying, and maybe people even stop grieving like we do, because now death almost feels like some kind of very long trip. And when the biggest event of a life stops being a huge deal, it changes the psychology of people. Which made me wonder, if death stops being the thing that takes people away from you, does something else take its place? If seeing the other side removes grief, where does it go? You know? Maybe every kind of long-distance travel or time apart starts feeling like death too. This is consequence number 8, and I'm calling it the long goodbye. If death is just a long goodbye, and you'll see the people you love again in those golden holes eventually, then death just starts to feel like the road. Or the road feels like death. So maybe you could imagine societies in which people mourn travelers. More generally, if death becomes mundane, we could imagine a society where the mundane becomes death-coded, so to speak, where dogs start having rites that resemble burials, and a sentence like safe travels could almost start feeling like a prayer. It does not add any mechanical complexity to the game, but it does color the world a lot, and will probably contribute to the feeling of immersion players get. But this is where things get darker, because if death isn't final, can there even be different kinds of deaths? Resurrection is not immortality. Even in D&D, you can die of old age. So, if you can come back from the dead, it means you have mini-deaths and true deaths. Even if both are not final, maybe on a personal level, people believe that you should only have one of each. Maybe you can get sentenced to multiple mini-deaths and a true death at the end, and you could build an institution around that idea that would be the only one allowed to process the worst crimes and carry this type of sentence. For example, you could build a dark justice god whose domain is an afterlife prison. The clergy of that god would be some sort of weird supreme divine court, and they would be tasked with judging and sentencing people time and time again until a final sentence sends the soul of these people to an eternal afterlife jail. I'm not saying all of these ideas have to end up in your game. These are thought experiments and personal reflections. It's 100% okay to just treat Resurrection as a pulp thing that just allows the players to fight tougher battles and suspend disbelief and consider the world is basically as we know it, psychology included, but somehow we can just bring back people from the dead. There are many ways to explore this resurrection idea, and I think one of my favorite ones might be number 10. Imagine a cleric character who praise the god of flight. They believe in justice, protecting the weak, etc. And they also believe that diamonds are expensive and should not be used to bring back people temporarily, and instead be sold to help the poor. Since people are going to end up in the god's kingdom anyway, why not use terrestrial resources to make life on the material plane more comfortable? Idea number 10 is the moral impossibility. Given the cost and structural issues of the ideas we discussed, maybe some people would treat resurrection magic as deeply immoral. Maybe the gods are actually mad because they're granting that power, but clerics can't accept to use it, and therefore the gods slowly start taking the rest of their power away, and divine magic starts to fade. Or maybe the only clerics who accept to use resurrection magic are therefore the evil, money, and power-hungry ones, and they ask you to convert when they resurrect you, otherwise they kill you again. And resurrected people carry dark marks on their bodies, and now the benevolent clerics won't even heal them at all. Again, the point of this video is not to say, oh my god, D&D is so incoherent, don't you see how none of it makes sense? Like, it's a game where you pretend to be an elf and fight dragons. It's okay. We can definitely choose to not explore any of these concepts and have a perfectly good time rolling dice. But if everyone is on board and you want to spice up your next campaign a little bit, I think trying a few of these ideas could be worth a shot. More generally, I'm a big fan of taking something we take for granted and then asking, but what does that mean for X? What does that mean for power? Family, relationships, etc. I just think that resurrection is often seen as this anti-stakes device. Because death is trivialized by it, it makes it harder to care. But if people in the game world treat resurrected people differently, or if you have to get in bed with dark powers to come back, you create new stakes. I feel like these thought experiments shift where the stakes are located and help us explore questions that are not things we think about on a daily basis. If you apply one or more of these to your campaign, I'm sure you will create some interesting choices for the players. And to me, that is what D&D is all about. But is it enough to make sure your campaign is on the right track? To find out, click on this video next to go through a 6-steps process that will take any campaign idea and make sure it's absolutely worth playing.